And I have a little presentation. So if you didn't hear the earlier message, now is a great time to go and grab those downloads. There's a link in the chat, and you can grab those resources now and use them as we kind of go through this together. And this is going to be a little bit interactive. So I'll ask you to think of something. So what we're focusing on today is how you would create an online course. So this is a little different than, hey, I want to stream video, or I want to, live cast my classes, or I want to record yoga classes. This is about like, how do I create an educational course online, whether that's like a workshop and something kind of, on the smaller scale, or whether it's something bigger. So that's what we're going to focus on in this. So I'm going to share my screen with all y'all so I can show you my pretty video that I created for you. All right. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Rachel, and I'm a yoga educator and a teacher trainer. And I don't know, it was about, 6 years ago or something like that. I was looking around in our community, and what had happened is I'd taken an online course with one of my absolute favorite teachers. This is somebody that I absolutely adore. And I took this online course, and I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but it was terrible. I was like, you are such an amazing instructor, and yet the genius that you have to share is not translating into the online platform. And I thought, I wonder if there's a way to do this better. And I was created some teacher trainings and things like that. So I went back to school and I earned my master's in instructional systems and learning technology, because I wanted to figure out, how can I help other yogis, other wellness practitioners, people who want to put their voice out there? How can I help us bridge the gap between loving something and being super passionate about it, and being able to put it online and share it in a way that's really transformational and really helpful to our communities. So I went back to school, and then now that's what I get to do. So obviously during this time, it seems like a really good time to put some information out there about how to put our stuff online. So if you haven't yet, but first go download your goodies. The link is in the chat. So if you could go and grab that stuff, that would be great. So let's talk about for a moment just what online education is. So online education is a pathway to leverage online tools that will help you to connect to your community in new ways. And so this can reinforce your current connections with your students, your friends, your people in your work environment. And it also allows you to grow your community beyond your current tribe. So by putting ourselves out there online, we can get a little bit more reach to people who might really love what we have to offer, but aren't geographically close to us or may not have access to us. It allows you to share your work more easily. It helps you to expand your brand and your voice as a trusted resource. And it allows you to build on your values. So I used to be in theater. I was an actor, and I used to do theater productions all the time. And it was like, once you did a theater production, it was like done. That was it. It was gone. And this is a little bit like teaching a yoga class, or being someone who teaches personal training sessions, or who does one-on-one massage. It's like, we have to be there in the moment, and then it's over. And we're not able to record the value of that experience, as opposed to, as a theater person, as opposed to doing film, where you actually have an archive of value that people can enjoy for years to come. So by creating something that's online, we're able to kind of archive and offer continual value, which is really nice. And for those of my friends who, like me, are yoga teachers and work on an hourly basis, this can be really good for our business. It helps us to be more resilient, because when we're tied down to working per hour, obviously, like if we get sick or we want to go on vacation or something like that, our revenue stops. So this is a way just to create like a very healthy kind of platform for ourselves and our business to help us be more sustainable, especially when like something like this happens, as we can all see. So today I'm gonna help you learn the groundwork for creating a course that's really educationally sound and can add value and help you build your brand and your business. So that's what we're gonna do today. And one of the reasons I mention that is because, I don't know, what drives me nuts is to see these kind of these online promotions where it's like, hey, build your online course and earn $60,000 in a week. And I get so distraught by that, because I just feel like, no, what we want to do, yes, sure, let's earn money. Let's add something of value, but really it needs to come from something that isn't like a get rich quick scheme, but is something that offers true lasting value. And so that's what I'm going to help you do. So today we are going to cover online versus in person and how those things are different. We're going to cover how to think like an educator, which is going to cover some other educational topics. We're going to talk about tech, the different platforms that are out there and different tools that you can use. And then we're going to do a Q&A. So, I'm sorry, but first, I'd like to know, who are you? If you are like, how many people do we have who are yoga students? Like, just if you flip out, yoga student, yoga educator, yoga teacher, trainer. We'll just get a sense of it by looking through here. Yeah, yoga educator. Yeah, yoga therapist, yoga teacher, so lots of teachers.
Yoga student.
Awesome, yoga student. Good, yoga student's great. Nice. Yeah. Okay, and then so let's think about, so what I'd also love to hear is what freaks you out about the idea of creating an online course? Like, is it coming up with the idea? Is it dealing with the technology? Like, what is it, creating the structure for it? What's the pain point of that? Tech, yeah. Technology, yep.
Technology.
Yeah. Yeah, throw it in the chat for me if you would, because it's easier for me to see. Choosing the best platform, yep, and figuring out what's important, all of everything. Yeah, marketing too can be something that's a little freaky. Group management, bad hair day. I have that all the time, Jen. All the time, Crystal. Yeah. I don't even try anymore. Structure. Oh yeah, great, good. So we're going to talk about a bunch of these things today. Yeah, and we'll talk about the platform, Erica, too. We'll talk about some different options. Structures and sales, steps for education. Great. Awesome, good. And then my final question is, where are you guys at in your course creation? So are some of you like, I have no idea? Do you have an idea, but you haven't implemented it yet? Or are some of you like in the middle of creating? So kind of like just starting to think about it. I have a good idea, or yeah, or I'm in the middle of it. I've created courses before. Yeah.
No idea. Trying to learn still.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. You know, I got stuck. It's funny, my sister said before this started, because she's been doing this a long time too, you know, she's like, a lot of times it's about getting started. And I totally felt that. Like before I started creating online courses, I felt sort of just paralyzed by the options, not sure where to start, not sure what, like the platforms themselves felt overwhelming to me. And I was so afraid of making the wrong choice. So hopefully we'll start to, yeah, right, putting teacher trainings online. So hopefully we'll start to dismantle some of those fears. And one thing, I'm going to share my screen with you guys again, but one thing I want to share with you is that good education is good education regardless of the tech. So we get this idea in our heads that we have to have like know the bells and whistles and, oh my gosh, what's this new tool? And should I know how to do like all of these, like all of this kind of integrated platform things or plugins or whatever. And I want to just wipe the slate clean for that. What I learned in my master's program was that good education is good education. We use the tools that work, but you could do an email online course that could be just as effective just by sending people links as you could by using some sort of fancy platform. So for my teachers out there and my yoga educators, what you know now is going to stand you in very good stead as you make the transition. There are some things we want to keep in mind when we go into online, particularly about structure, which we'll look at next. But really, it's like you've got a good platform. And actually, that's the next thing is why is, and I'll leave the chat open for this one, why is teaching online, like education online, different from in person? What are some of the reasons that it's like not the same? Yeah. Global access, can't read the room. Yes, less human interaction. What are you saying?
Impersonal.
It can feel impersonal, for sure.
Yeah, you want to feel if you match with the teacher.
Yeah. So you guys have already, yeah, less spontaneous. It has to feel more professional. Might also have to be more structured. Yes, for sure, Sasha. More one-sided communication. Yeah, but we can actually work on that, Jim. That's an interesting one. So you guys have really put your fingers on the pulse of it, which is that especially when we're yoga teachers and yoga educators, we're very adept usually at reading the room. We read faces, we read body language, we can tell if someone's getting it or not. Online, we can't do any of that. Also, when we're in person, we can go on a tangent. I mean, maybe we shouldn't always go on that tangent, but we can go on a tangent and go down a rabbit hole or explore something different. Online, there's no room for that. There's no room to actually get to your students outside of the framework you've created. So that means a couple of things that we need. We really need to structure our course well, which we're going to really get into today. And we also need to provide opportunities for self-assessment and for our assessment. So we need to provide opportunities for our students to find out if they're getting it, since I can't look at Betty's face and see her go, right? So we have to kind of provide opportunities to do that within the framework of the course. All right, back to my screen share. There we go. Okay. Awesome. All right, so let's talk. Before we talk about how to go online, we need to talk about how to be a good educator. A lot of you are yoga teachers, which is great, but there's a big difference between teaching a class and being an educator, even though they often look the same, like I'm standing, I'm presenting, I'm sharing knowledge, but actually it's a real transition to be an educator and to put on kind of an educator mindset. So as an educator, what we want to do is we want to start with the end in mind. So I want you to take a moment right now, and you can do it on a worksheet, you can imagine it, you could write it on your computer somewhere. I want you to think about the course or the training or the workshop that's like a glimmer in your mind's eye. If you're not quite sure, make something up that just sort of is plucking at you. And I want you to think, what do I want my students to remember from this in 2 years' time? What's the big idea? And if you've got the worksheet that I gave you, you can actually input that into your start with the end in mind place. And you can see. I'm just going to give you guys a couple of minutes. Okay, maybe wrap up. And you guys, obviously, you'll come back to this later and kind of fill it out. But I find that when we're starting especially to move into online, which is very structured, we can kind of get in the weeds a little bit. Keeping the big idea of your course in mind is really important. And also just keeping in mind the destination and where we want to get to. So one of the most important things, and I think this if there's one thing you take away from this today, I hope this is it, is something that I call the great mistake. So beginning with the end in mind helps us focus on what we want the students to do at the end of the learning process with us. And let me tell you why this is so important. And I'll share a personal story. So when I first started to create teacher trainings, I was hired by Yoga to create their 200-hour, create their department. I was so excited. I wanted to give them everything in my head. I was like, this is it. I'm going to download everything I know and I'm going to give it to them and it's going to be amazing and they're going to learn so much. It's going to be awesome. And so I basically did that. And it wasn't terrible, but it didn't really work because what I was doing is I was focusing on what I was sharing rather than what the students can do. So what we have to do when we're being educators is we have to put the students in the front seat. I need to focus on what the student can do as a result of their time with me. Because if I'm thinking about just everything that's in my head and everything they want to share, I'm actually probably overloading it. I gave the students way too much information and didn't really focus on what they could do. So the great mistake is focusing on what I'm sharing and what I'm saying rather than on the performance of my students. And if we can just keep the end in mind, which is what can this person do? What kind of transformation have they gone through so that they can do something that they couldn't do before? That's going to change what we teach them. And it's going to keep us far more on track. So the way that we're able to do this and focus on performance is through something called learning objectives. Now, many of you may have heard about learning objectives before and used them before, but they can be really, really powerful. They can also be ineffective. So I want to show you how to use them properly. And I find that they are a great tool when we're creating trainings, especially online. So a learning objective describes the intended performance outcome of the experience. And when they are well written, they provide measurable, that is a key word, measurable and specific benchmarks to guide lesson plan creation and help you to evaluate whether or not they're getting what you want them to. And they're usually written as, by the end of the lesson, students will, da, 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 da. Now, I want to give you an example of an ineffective learning objective. So an ineffective learning objective would be something like, by the end of this course, students will know how to teach Warrior 2. Now, why do you guys think that's ineffective? Any ideas? Like, students are they're gonna know how to teach that pose. They're gonna understand Warrior 2. They're gonna understand Ayurveda. They're gonna know about self-care. What might be wrong or not complete about that as a learning objective? Everyone's like, no. Yes, Sasha. Yeah, too broad, not measurable. Thanks, Lindsay. Yes, not specific enough. Vague. Yeah. So a better learning objective, we want to look at our learning objectives and make sure that I can actually tell if the student is getting it. So for example, students will know how to teach Warrior 2, right? That's a step up because now I can see them teach it. Now, that's better, but we can do even better than that. I'm going to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole here with you about learning objectives, which is that a really well-crafted learning objective has 3 parts. The first is the what, so it's what we've been talking about. It's a description of what the student's able to do. The second part is the how, okay? Because if I just say a student will be able to teach Warrior 2, that's great, but how are they going to do it? Students will be able to teach Warrior 2 in a virtual class environment of 5 other students. Students will be able to teach Warrior 2 to their cat. Okay, those are 2 very different things. So when we're writing our learning objectives, we can make it clear how the student's going to be able to do it. And then to take it one step further, we can talk about the criteria for it, which is how well they have to do it. Because I could say, students will teach Warrior 2 to a virtual classroom of 5 students, but how will I know if they've done it successfully? How will I know if they've done it well, so that I feel comfortable saying, check, yes, you can graduate from my online course. So ways that we can do that is to define, like, students will teach Warrior 2 to a virtual classroom of 5 students using direct language, teaching from the ground up, incorporating at least 5 essential actions for the pose. Now, all of a sudden, by being that specific with my learning objectives, I have really clear benchmarks for what it's going to take for that student to be successful, right? I've gone a far distance from students are going to know how to teach Warrior 2 to this. And also, when my learning objectives are this specific, the students know what they need to do in order to be successful. Exactly. If I'm vague, if I'm broad, if I'm not measurable, like you guys have said, then the students are also not going to know, like, if they're doing well or not. They're not going to know what they need to do in order to improve their own skills. So for real transformation, we need to be super specific. So what I want you guys to do now is to take a look at your own course, your own big pie in the sky idea. Now we can just focus on the level, like we'll call them course level learning objectives. So by the end of your course, students will be able to, and give a shot just writing 1 or 2 of those learning objectives, making them super specific and clear. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to do that. Just do 1 of them. If you want to, you can pop them into the chat and I'll take a look at them. Now, everybody, a well-crafted learning objective can sometimes be a real pain in the ass to create. Like sometimes they actually take a lot of care to write and a lot of time. So just know that your first draft of one, you can always come back and you can change it and tweak it. You may find that they change as you're working through your course and you realize other things that you need to include. Yeah, but it's really, the more specific you are, it's so great because then it gives you a really clear pathway to seeing what the performance is and if students are actually able to do it. So anyone else want to share one of their learning objectives? If not, totally fine. And you guys, I'm also happy to chat with you offline about this too. All right, so I think just for the sake of time, we'll keep moseying on here. So one of the cool things, and if you look at Val put hers in the chat, students will learn to teach Sun Citation A in a virtual class of 5 students. using cues to move with the breath, with direct language, and incorporating 3 cues per pose to align the pose. Awesome. So when we look at that, we go, hey, when I see that, I know exactly how I'm going to assess the student, right? So this comes to something that we call alignment. So alignment is when the learning objectives, all of the activities that we do, whether it's lectures, worksheets, videos, journal entries, all of that stuff, and then the assessment are all like aligned. They're all leading to the same kinds of learning objectives. They all reinforce each other. So the definition of alignment is that the critical course components, learning objectives, assessments, instructional materials, learning activities, course tech, they all reinforce one another to ensure that learners achieve the desired learning outcomes. So it means that all aspects of your course are really working towards your stated goals. So what this means, my friends, and I had to learn this the hard way, is that sometimes we have to be really simple. Like we so want to include like this module on Ayurveda, but it's actually not related to where we want our students to get to. And especially when we're teaching online, we need to be razor sharp. So one of the things that's different between online teaching and between in-person teaching, which we didn't mention yet, is that when you're teaching in person, you basically have a captive audience, right? When you're teaching online, you got your student at home and she's like got a toddler on the floor eating something, and she's got like a dinner cooking on the stove, and she's trying to also do her online job or talk to her boss or talk to her administrative assistant. So we have people who are busy and who are in the thick of life, like, and have a lot of other obligations going on. So when it's different than having someone in an enclosed environment where we get all of their attention. So when we're teaching and designing our online course, we want it to be razor sharp towards its intended goals. We don't want to have a lot of fluff in there that's not related to that. And that's where you can do something, this is like just a side tactic, but you could do something like if you're interested in this, go here, but it's not necessarily part of your course structure, right? You can have like additional bonus material. But we want to be really clear, because students at home, when they're working on something, the thing that we deal with as online instructors is that there's an attrition rate because students get too busy. So we need to keep them on track, and being in alignment helps us do that really effectively. So now that once you've created your course learning objectives, then you can go back and create your assessments, right? And your assessments are going to be really tied into your learning objectives. Now notice, and I know this is a little strange, but notice that we've gone from learning objectives to assessments to how you're going to evaluate them. We haven't talked about the in-between yet at all. I'm saying like what we want to focus on is like what you want them to learn, and then we go to the end of the course and it's like, how are you going to assess them? So there are 2 different kinds of assessments. One kind of assessment is called a summative assessment, and this is like the thing at the end of your online course. It's going to be like your big exam, or maybe they're doing a video submission to you or something like that, which is a culmination of all of their skills. But we also need to do something called formative assessments. And these are assessments that we do along the way. It's kind of like the little check-ins to see, did you get that concept? Are you missing anything? And these are really important, especially when we're doing online, again, because like you guys have so rightly pointed out, we don't have that in-person thing where I go, Jonathan looks confused, right? Like, you don't know what he's getting. Since we don't have that, we have to put assessments in where the students can self-assess, or where we can assess so we can see if they're on the right track. So I want to get practical here for a minute and talk about online assessments. So let's get down to brass tacks. When you're creating an online course, you have a choice about how much you participate as a teacher, right? So at one end of the spectrum, you could say like, you know what, Rach, I want to create an online course. I don't ever want to touch it. I just want to create it. I want students to go through it. I don't want to have to evaluate them. I don't want to have to spend extra time in this course, right? I just want them to take it and, it's like, that's it. I don't even know what's happened. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the courses like I did in my master's program, which were online, where the faculty is just as involved in the course as they would be if they were teaching in person. They're moderating online discussions. They're reading my papers. They're providing me feedback. They're available for me to talk to. It's just as time intensive as like a real course. Or you may want to be somewhere in between. You're like, look, I know it's kind of like best practices to give them assessment, but I just don't really have the time. So how can I manage that? So just to point this out, Most of the time, if you're using an online platform, the kind of assessments that they're going to let you use automatically are going to be things like multiple choice questions, right? So there's some things that you can get away with students self-assessing themselves kind of automatically where you don't have to step in. But if it's a higher level course, and say it's really important to you, say you're doing a yoga therapy course, okay, and you want to make sure that the students who are coming through the course, when you give them a certificate, you want to make sure that you sign off that they've actually completed everything that you need them to complete. Well, at that point, you're going to have to create some sort of in-person assessment or some sort of video submission or a higher level assessment where you're going to actually have to spend time on it. So just practically speaking, for all you out there, there's different ways to go about this. One way, if you kind of want the best of both worlds, is you could create two different pricing structures for your online course. You could have your online course, which is totally do it yourself. Your students come in, they take it, they do the multiple choice quizzes. They're kind of on their own, but you do the best you can to make sure that they've gotten it. And that's one price. And then you have the same course at a different price level where you as the faculty actually get involved more. The truth of the matter is that a course is likely going to have a higher educational punch if you as faculty are involved, or if it's a course that requires higher level skills. So you guys, you just got to kind of weigh it in the balance and say like, okay, what kind of course do I want to create? How much realistically can I be hands-on in this? Do I want to be hands-on in this? So I'll share a personal story here about one of the ways that I tackled this with one of my partners, which is Do Yoga With Me. So with Do Yoga With Me, we created a big online teacher training course. 2/3 of it are online, 1/3 of it is in person. And we were kind of grappling with the same question. Like, I know that it's better as an educator if I can interact with the students. And in fact, as an educator, I love that. I love interacting with the students. But I also know that if I try to take on too much, it's gonna like ruin my life. It's gonna be too much, right? So we came to like a balancing act with this. And what we did in our courses is that for every course that the students take, there's an online forum. So they can do, and we do online questions where they get to, kind of reflect upon their coursework for that week. And then I can chime in and I can add little comments as the faculty. And then they do all of their courses. And then when they get to the end of one level, then that's when I spend more of my time. At that point, once they've completed a series of courses, they submit like a video submission to me, a writing submission to me, all of this kind of stuff that then I take time out to review and then have an in-person chat with them. So we kind of balanced it between, hey, they're doing a lot of coursework on their own, so we don't have to be so hands-on. I'm gonna do some feedback in these group discussions, but then at the end of the level, when it counts, I'm gonna really do a more in-person, time-consuming assessment. So these are just things to think about for you. You guys, you could be anywhere on the spectrum that you want to be and that really works for you. Any questions about that?
That's perfect.
We can always circle back to that in the Q&A if anything comes up. All right. So what you would do at this point is you'd actually write your course level assessments. Now, I think you guys, just for the sake of time, I think you can take that away now that you have a sense of doing it for, kind of like for your homework or to integrate into the courses that you're already working on. But this just kind of goes to show we really want alignment between, hey, the learning objectives and the assessments. Oh, actually, I have a little story to share with you. All right. When I was in high school, I don't know how I got into this course because I am not a science and math girl at all, but I got myself into AP chemistry. And my teacher, I was terrible at chemistry, but I tried real hard. But at the end of our trimester, Mr. Bradley, my sister will remember him well, Mr. Bradley gave us a standardized chemistry test, which I got like an 8% on or something like that. We all failed it. And I went to him and I said, Mr. Bradley, this test is not at all about what we've been tested on. That is an example of something being out of alignment. When you're taught something and then you're tested on something which isn't the same. So that just, and he actually decided to change the method. He's like, Rachel, I'm changing the test. So he changed the exam because of that, because he recognized that it wasn't fair. So just another reason for us to really try to keep the congruency between, hey, what we're telling you to learn, what we have you learn, and then what we're testing you on. So everybody take a deep breath. So we have a sense now of our big picture, the big picture idea. We have a sense of what our learning objectives are going to be for the whole course, and then how we're going to assess the whole course. So now for this next section, what I'm going to do is move us into the map making. So some of you were concerned about, hey, how do I structure this thing? So we're going to look at that now. So this is what we call a course map. So what you do is you take your big picture topic and you divide it into smaller topics, right? So, okay, let's say that I'm coming back to my learning objective of, I want my students to learn how to teach Warrior 2 to Virtual Classroom of 5 with these kind of skills, yada, yada. Well, my first week, if what I want them to do is to teach using direct language, my first module might be just on direct language. So what I would do is I'd create a module, topic being direct language. Then I create module level learning objectives. So we have your big picture learning objectives, but these are the specific little learning objectives that give your students the information that they need, the skills they need to kind of get to the big level course objectives. So we're just breaking it down into smaller chunks. So for example, a module level learning objective might be define direct language, right? Describe the pros and cons of direct language. Give an example of non-direct language. And then using direct language, cue the general form of Warrior 2. So I'm really reinforcing this one piece of content for them. A bad example of a module level learning objective for that particular topic, if my topic is direct language, would be something like describe the benefits of Warrior 2, right? That doesn't have anything to do with this. So I really want to stay on topic for this particular module. And so then you can see as you work your way across this particular template, okay, what's my topic? What's my learning objective? And then I'm getting into activities, which is like, okay, how am I going to share this information and teach it? And for most of us, I find that we usually stick with things like videos and readings, and then maybe some student activities, which could be role playing. It could be them self-recording and assessing themselves. It might be a worksheet that they have to fill out. And so all of these things should be leading towards my end goal of them actually being able to teach it. So for example, maybe for the lecture, I have a video of myself talking about direct language and what it is. Maybe I give an example and do a demonstration of direct language and then non-direct language so that they can really see an example of something that's good about it, and then a non-example so they kind of can see the difference. That can be really helpful for your students. The student activities would be watching the videos. Maybe they read a handout that I've created about it. Maybe there's a worksheet where they actually identify what's direct language, what's not direct language. Maybe they create a script for themselves using direct language. And then finally, for the assessment, again, this kind of depends how much you as an instructor want to step in. You know, you could have them self-record themselves teaching Warrior 2 and then listen back and go through a checklist that you've created of, did I use like, you know, what kind of language did I use? Did I use lots of ing words? So that you give them the tools to evaluate whether or not they're doing the thing they've learned to do. On the other end of the spectrum, if you're like a hands-on person, you could have them send you a video and you talk with them and you give them feedback. So again, alignment. We're creating alignment between our learning objectives, the activities that we're doing, and then the assessments. So it all ties neatly together. So just some kind of tips about different kinds of student activities that you might use. So I find that, you know, if students don't know anything about what you're talking about yet, you have to give them the information. Then doing a lecture is a really good idea. You could also do a narrated PowerPoint, something like that can be useful. Assigning them reading. This is going to build up their inventory. This is what inputs the information into your students. And then when they're working on it, you want to have activities like worksheets or, you know, maybe they actually do activities where they do a practice or they do a practice teaching session where they're actually putting that into action. Now, here's a note. If you're teaching them something which is like a physical skill, which is what we do a lot in yoga, you want to start off really simple. So you'll notice that if my big learning objective is to have them teach Warrior 2 with all of these different components, then I want to start simply and just have them teach Warrior 2, like just teach the general form, right? And then I'm going to build on that. Teach the general form using direct language. Then I add another skill. Teach Warrior 2, teaching from the ground up using direct language. So this is what we call like, it's like building their skills or scaffolding. It's like we give them different levels, adding on complexity as we go so that they don't feel frustrated by the process or feel like we're going too far too fast. And sometimes that feels super simplistic to us, especially when we're breaking it down in these component parts. But for online, that's really going to be the clearest way to make sure your students are understanding what you're teaching. I also like to use journal reflections a lot. I use these a lot of times in the courses that I've made, where it gets students to actually not just download the information, but then to do something where they can integrate it into something they already know or are already working on. As much as possible, we want the students to apply what we give them somehow in real life. The more that we can do that, the more the knowledge is going to stick. All right. So again, just for the sake of time, I'm going to kind of scooch on through this, but you guys have a sense now. You can use this map to kind of plot out how you're going to create your course. Now, I want to talk about for a moment copyright and legal stuff, because when we're creating online stuff, it's super tempting to just like go and grab material. And I had some questions before, like, hey, can I, photocopy this stuff and include it as a resource? Can I link to stuff? Like, what can I do? So here's the deal. If you create it, you write it, you draw it, then you own it. So when we're creating a course, I really recommend that people create their own material, because then you know that you have it. So if you've written it, you don't have to write copyright on it or anything. If you've created it, it's under your copyright when you create it. When you're linking to things online, so we have a whole world at our disposal out there, and you might find some amazing resources out in the world that you want to use. Go for it. Be careful not to like inundate your students with too much. Like really make sure that, again, it's in alignment with everything that you want them to know and understand. But you could, for instance, like link to a YouTube video. I think you can actually embed a YouTube video as long as you reference the link. So you need to create references if you're linking to anything like that or including it. Like if it's available online and people could just watch it for free, then it's pretty okay to put it in your course as long as you reference where it's from. And do that scrupulously. Now, in terms of like writing and material and stuff like that, it's really not cool to actually photograph handouts or stuff like that, but you could say link to a yoga journal article that you think is really relevant and pertinent, right? So, but whenever you're doing that and you're pulling in outside material, you always want to frame it and contextualize it for your students so they know what it's about and how it relates to what they're learning. So for example, if I just taught something on the anatomy of the knee in an online course, and I want to link to something that someone's put on, Yoga Journal, then I might say, check out this article from Yoga Journal and note these things that we've just talked about, da 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 da. So I really want to frame anything I'm using from the outside so that it's really relevant to the flow of our experience in our course. And again, you always want to link those things, and there's ways to do that with APA format, like kind of like official formatting, like you have to make a bibliography, right? You want to be really mindful of that. Also because I think that reflects well on us as educators. So when I really reference in my work and give attribution to other people, if I'm linking to something that I'm using of theirs, to my students, I'm also showing them how much I value this resource and want to uphold the value of it. So I'm not just sharing indiscriminately. Just a note here, you guys, if you're getting photos taken, make sure that the photographer signs over the rights to you for the photos, because they actually own the photos. So that's just a small thing that I found out over the years, which I thought I'd share so you know. There's tons of royalty-free, like all the videos or all the pictures from this particular webinar most of them came from a site called Unsplash. Oh no, it came from Pixabay. Pixabay is like my go-to for royalty-free images. They have tons of good stuff. So just in my own courses that I've created, I've used Pixabay a lot. I've used Unsplash a lot. When I'm creating anatomy, I use Wikimedia Commons. You just have to check. Sometimes you have to attribute the person who originally created it. So you really want to make sure you do that. I do that in all of my teacher training materials and stuff like that. I also didn't find everything I was looking for, so I went and I purchased images from Shutterstock. So there are lots of places out there that you can buy images as well. Just make sure that if you're using them for commercial usage, make sure you buy the right license. And if you're borrowing anything from Wikimedia, make sure that you attribute it if you need to. And it'll tell you about that on there too. Can you please share? Yes, it's actually in the handout, you guys. So I put the few, the ones that my go-tos, my highest go-tos for royalty-free images. It's in that handout, so you can see it right there. Okay, yeah, no, it's all good. Okay, let's talk about platforms. So we call this an LMS, a learning management system. And there's a lot of platforms out there. Usually they have a monthly cost or an annual cost, or they take a percentage of the revenue that you take in. Some come equipped with marketing and sales funnels. So I know marketing and sales, sometimes we get kind of like, oh my God, how do I do that? Blah, right? So some of them come with kind of tools that you can use to bundle courses together, to create coupons really easily, to create affiliate codes. So if you're looking for something which is super marketing pro, then you probably want something like Kajabi. It's expensive, but it has the marketing, sales funnel-y stuff kind of all hooked into it. My personal favorite is Thinkific. That's the one that I use, and they're based in Vancouver. Yay! So I just like them because they're local and they're very similar to Teachable. It's like they're twins, honestly. And they usually do monthly fees. I mean, you can check out their pricing points. And again, this is listed in your handout, so you'll be able to see them there. I actually have a link, so you can link to Thinkific if you want to check it out. I love using Google Docs as well. And you guys, like I said before at the beginning, you can create a really potent online or non-in-person training experience through emails. Like you could create emails with linked videos and linked readings, linked to documents and linked to quizzes, like in a really homegrown way that doesn't even have a platform. Personally, I like to have a platform and I like them to make it pretty for me so that I don't have to deal with any of that. It makes it super easy just to put all my courses in one place. And as far as I can tell, Teachable and Thinkific are pretty similar. Now, Canvas is a really high-powered, that's what the universities use. That'll do anything you want, but it doesn't link with your sales funnel. Thinkific and Teachable will link with payments, which makes it easier for us. And frankly, we don't often need all the bells and whistles that something like Canvas has. Here's a really subtle sidebar note about Teachable and Thinkific, is that they don't charge sales tax well. So if you are like me and you're resident in BC and you're selling something to somebody in a different province, we're supposed to charge them differently. There may be some leeway on that because it's an online course though, so actually I should check that out. But just so you know, they don't charge sales tax. So you may have to go back through and like, well, if they're in the US, for example, you don't have to charge, this is for the Canadians out there, but you don't have to charge GST in the United States, right? But you do have to charge it to all your Canadians. So Thinkific and Teachable won't distinguish between your US buyers and your Canadian buyers. So that means that afterwards you have to go back through manually and figure it out, or just take 5% off the top in general and basically give that to CRA. Anyways, I have some workarounds on that. If that's a specific concern for you, then feel free to reach out to me and we can chat about it. They also do have third-party plugins that you can use if you want to that can help to mitigate against that. I recommend, in my opinion, using a third-party platform like Teachable or Thinkific, which takes care of the sales for you. Even if you have to deal with a 5% hit on GST, it's worth it because you want your students to be able to do a one-click through it in an easy way. So I like to use those. Udemy does like a sharing. It's on their platform, I think. And then my sister could actually probably answer that if I'm being accurate there. Yeah, I'll talk about WordPress plugins in a sec. So Udemy, it's like a sharing thing where I think, you know, you get a percentage of the revenue and they get a percentage of the revenue and they'll market you a little bit. For me, I mean, that's cool if you want it kind of out there. I like to have stuff kind of associated with my own brand and my website. So that's why I choose something a little closer to home that I can manage and I can brand and I can make it really part of what my stuff is. But totally up to you guys. So lots of things to check out there. But keep it here, keep it simple. Don't get too hung up on it. It can become super easy to let the choice of platform get in the way of actually moving forward. Jump on one of these guys, take a free trial, get in there, look behind the scenes, poke around a little bit, and you'll see, you'll get a sense real fast whether or not you like it. I find Thinkific, and I'm sure Teachable is too, real easy to work with, like user-friendly, which is something that I like. So WordPress plugins. If you have a WordPress site, you can use plugins and actually turn your WordPress site into your kind of your LMS yourself. What you generally do is you create a subdomain on your site like courses.regina.com, and then you put all your stuff there because you're going to need to make it look a little different. Honestly, if you're not techie, I wouldn't go that way. Like I looked into that. I played with Zippy courses for a while. Yeah, I played with Zippy courses for a while, and I found, I just found it really tedious and not so pretty and hard to monitor. And I also wanted a place that would easily kind of let me see my students' progress. If you love tech and you're a website person, or you have a website person, like I'm working with a client right now who has a web guy, and they're totally going the WordPress plugin route. For me, as a sole proprietor, being Rachel, not being a website expert, I don't like that. But if you know your way around that system, I know it can work. That's about WordPress. Sweet. So now let's pop to the Q&A. So Denise, why I love Google Docs and the difference between forms built into website, like registration forms, or using Google Docs. The forms built into websites. Well, the forms that are usually built into websites, like I'm even though I use tech a lot, I'm not a web expert. So usually the forms on a website are like, I've used them mostly for newsletter subscription forms or pop-ups in order to get people to sign up for my newsletter. Whereas on Google Docs, I love Google Docs because I find them super easy to use and super easy to share. I put my entire yoga teacher training into Google Docs. So all the trainer's notes, all the schedulings, and everything else. Now for an online course, I don't think, and another reason I like Google Docs is because if you want to edit something, you can edit it, it's live, and it's updated across all your links. So for example, my friends, if you are creating a massive course like a teacher training, and you have one document that you need to put in all those different courses, for God's sake, don't put that document and embed it into every course. Because if you want to change one thing on that document, you got to go in, remove that document, edit it, re-upload it. It's such a pain, right? Create a link to that document, let it live as a Google Doc, and then when your students click on it, they'll get the most updated version. Can you hear that was a pain point based on my experience? But I'm not quite sure, like for registration forms, I'm just not quite sure what you mean. Beatrice, well, the plugins work in Squarespace, not tech at all. Yeah, Squarespace is a really user-friendly website. WordPress is like a PC. Wix and Squarespace are like a Mac, right? So when you have a PC like WordPress, you can put in all sorts of plugins in there. You can fiddle around with it. You can like do all these workarounds. Like that's a WordPress, and it's kind of like heavy-handed, right? So you can do a lot of stuff in there. Frankly, on Squarespace, I don't know that they have a learning management plugin. Does anybody know? Anyone else know out there? But I think you might have to go the route of getting a third-party helper like a Thinkific or a Teachable rather than doing the plugins yourself. But I don't know. It's a good question. So if anybody knows, pop it in the chat. And now's the time. So if you have any questions that I can answer for you, you can pop them into the chat and we'll take a look. Or how about this, you guys? If everyone feels like good, I got it. Fantastic. I wanted to let you know before you take off, and I'm going to hang out for a while in case anybody has questions that they want to ask. I decided this is like a webinar, so it's super fast. There's a lot of information. And some of you that might work really well for your brains. But over the next while, I'm going to like probably a week or so, I'm going to launch a course, which basically includes this information, but a deeper dive. So I'll go a little deeper into all of the different things, also cover things like video and best practices and stuff like that. Include a little bit more of those technical aspects. And so I'll be putting that out. So I'll send everybody a note when it's out. And if you're interested, you can check it out. But it seems like it might be a good time to just put more of these resources out there. So that's something that's coming up in the next little while. You can stay tuned for. So you guys feel free to stay on the chat if you want to be part of the Q&A. Otherwise, I'm so grateful to see all of your faces and see you guys again. It's really nice. And I'm glad that you were able to spend some time today, and I really appreciate it. And I'll send you the link to this so you've got it afterwards if you want it.
Thank you so much, Rachel. That is really, really helpful for me.
You are so welcome.
Grateful. Thanks.
All right, I'm gonna go look, Crystal. Oh, different options for video conferencing. Yeah, I totally can. Actually, I have a couple. I have a couple of articles that I just put out on my website. Here, I'm just gonna screen share again just to show you that super fast. Can I find it quickly? I think so. So if we pop over to my website, let me just go here. There's tons of resources here, and I just did one on live casting and one on how to record and put up an online class. So you can just go here, a little slow, because we're doing so much of that lately. And in the one about best practices for an online class, let me scroll down here and find it. It's just on my lead page or my front page. Recent posts here, 5 best practices how to teach an online yoga class. I include all my tech. So I'm like, here's your best practices for recording an online class video. Here's the audio that I use. And there's another one on recording and uploading where I talk about uploading best practices and stuff like that. So just know that you can also check that out there, and I've got some stuff. How do you price? I'm seeing people discounting their yoga trainings because they're online. How do I price my yoga teacher trainings, or how do I price general, like how you price like generally online classes? You know what, this is a debate that I was just having with my boyfriend this morning actually, because he's like, online classes tend to get priced less, but in a way they're also more valuable because people are able to do them whenever they want to. So how do you do it? And I really think it depends. I choose to price my online stuff. It depends also how much you're going to be interacting with the students. So, you know, I don't really know. I think it's kind of like, what is of value, and then what do you think is fair for people? And there's the answer is there's no set answer. I've seen courses out there for like, you know, $15, which are probably amazing, and then people pricing their courses at $800. So I think you just have to like do an internal integrity check and see like, okay, what feels good for people? I tend to price it less than in person because my time isn't required, and hopefully I can reach more people. Would I recommend video or audio for courses? I think great question. And I think it really depends on what you're teaching. So if you're teaching something that requires people to see you, then obviously you're going to want to do something that's video. If they don't need to see you, then, and you think that it would be better for them to listen to a lecture like as an audio cast or a podcast, then I would do audio. So I think you just have to look at, what are my learning objectives? What do I need them to get? And then what is the purpose of this piece of learning material? And what is going to be the best piece of tech to deliver that? Because sometimes if it's really like you want them to listen to a lecture or listen to a meditation, the video actually could be distracting, right? So just do the audio. It's a good question. We had some challenges with our participants familiar with tech. I know, right? I think you have to create like a good Q&A sheet with links to all of your tech. Definitely. Like you have to create, like go online, go to YouTube and find and source the best videos for people in terms of managing their tech, so that you don't have to be on there all the time. So that they have a first stop for problem solving those technical issues that doesn't involve your time. So take the time to go get resources. There's tons of YouTube stuff for like everything that you could think of. Also include the help links to the helpline for like Zoom and helpline for whatever platform you're using, so that they have a direct access to those people, and they can go there for their information rather than you having to troubleshoot it all the time. And then if they really can't figure it out, then it requires in-person attention. All right, sweet. I think that's all the questions I've seen. Did I miss any, you guys? I think I got them all. Wow. If someone is primarily a kinesthetic learner, have you noticed any helpful support tips for online learning for these folks? Bye, Christy, you're welcome. Yeah, I mean, I think video, right? So if you're getting them, like it depends what you're teaching, obviously, but video is helpful in terms of like mirror neurons, like in terms of watching somebody do something and feeling it in their body, having students do self-palpation. If you can, offering partner work where they work with a partner that maybe at home, like I've asked people to, you know, find a friend, you give them time with some of the exercises to teach somebody else. But it is tricky. That's one of the things, is that we can't touch people. So for real, that's an issue. But I think self-palpation can be good, or giving them ways to touch. Anyone else have any suggestions on that? Because I know some of you are people. Yeah. Do you know a platform where you could do a recorded video where you're speaking and discussing? Yeah, for sure. Erica, you just need a screen capture technology. So there's lots of screen capture technology out there which will record you like in the corner, like your little face, and then your PowerPoint. I like to use one that's called Camtasia. So you pay for it, but there's others like, there's others that are free.
Screencast-O-Matic is one.
Yeah, that's by the same people, isn't it? Jen, can you write that into the chat? I'll write Camtasia in there too. Camtasia has some bells and whistles where you can, I do my editing in there and I make fancy little animations and stuff. Lindsay, it's nice to see you. All right, you guys, thanks for coming. If you have questions, ping me, and I hope this helps you in everything that you're doing. So thanks for coming.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks, Rachel.
Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
And you.